Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sanjay Sabnani. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody. I'd like to thank the team at Banque du Liban for arranging this event, for inviting those of us who are here from other places. I would especially like to thank the city of Beirut. I have to tell you, it's my first time here, and it's been quite a wonderful experience, especially because of my Uber drivers. I had a gentleman drive me today who, when I was complimenting the city, he mentioned something, and I think it was lost in translation, about how I'm a flower in Beirut's garden now, right? So I have to tell you, I felt beautiful all day, right? So thank you, Beirut. From one flower to others. Okay, so if you tweet about me, my kids see it. That's really the only relevant thing in my life. My company, so to give you a little bit of a background, I run a company called CrowdGather. We're a digital media company. We have a network of online communities or forum-type sites. And forum or bulletin board communities are very popular in Arabic-speaking countries. We also have a social casino called Mega Fame Casino. So we're a digital holding company. But what I wanted to share is a little bit of my entrepreneurial journey and trying to connect it with you folks. Because the big question here is funding, right? How to get money for your startup, how to get the support that you need. And I think it's really important. You hear a lot of jargon, you hear a lot of terms, startup ecosystem. I don't even know what these things mean anymore, right? The truth is, I'm sorry, I'm under attack by a bee. The truth is, when you're an entrepreneur, I'd like you to think about it as though you're having a baby, right? When people come to me for mentoring or advice, my point is, are you having the baby, right? Because I'm a father of 3 kids, not that I had much to do with them, but when you're having a child, it's an organic urgency. There's really no choice. So as you start meditating on your idea, on your product, on your vision, you'll start seeing things. You'll start talking to yourself. You'll go insane. Entrepreneurship is fundamentally insanity, just like in a way pregnancy can be too. So when people come to me and tell me, hey, I'm still at my job, and I think if I can raise $50,000, I'll feel confident enough to quit. You're not having the baby. Nobody ever needed funding to have the baby, right? So keep that in mind. Now, one of the things I want to connect with you too is in order to raise money, you need to have that urgency of someone having the child, but you also have to connect it very personally to who you are and to your story. So towards that end, I'll give you an example. I'm born and raised in Hong Kong, right? I'm Indian. My family is originally from Hyderabad, Sindh. So I am the grandchild and child of refugees that left when Pakistan was separated from India. That's the reason I'm born and raised in Hong Kong, right? My dad's dad was working in Saigon. My mom grew up in Laos, Indochina. Our families have been traders for generations on the Indus rivers. I tell you this because I feel very much at home in Lebanon. My story is like a Lebanese story, right? Everybody is from somewhere else, but you all come home finally to celebrate, right? So that story of being a merchant, of being a trader, I mean, we're in the land of the Phoenicians. So I think there's a lot to be inspired here. But what you have to do with your business and your product is really make it yours. Don't try and copy, don't try and emulate. I think the big secret of Silicon Valley that everyone should appreciate, Silicon Valley is nothing without the immigrants, right? Between 95 and 2001, 40% of all Silicon Valley public offerings were Indian-founded startups, and that's just Indians. If you include all minorities, all different ethnicities, it's a very large universe. So, some thoughts here. Are you having the baby, right? When I look at a company, in order to lend my name, my support, my money, I'm looking at who do they know that is involved. Your professors, people you've worked for, your friends, your relatives. If you can't convince the people that you know, right, there's no point talking to strangers, so make sure that you're excited and you resonate with your story. Don't try and reinvent the wheel. Right? There's enough new things going on. Uber is new enough. You don't have to figure out a new corporate structure or a 17-part transaction because you really think that you understand some financial concepts. Use proven, established patterns. In business, when you're asking people for money, their first concern is their downside. Before they can get excited about the upside and the vision, they really need to understand that you are somebody who is safe with money, right? So try and learn these things. Tell a story. A lot of people tell a story, you know, they're building the Airbnb of this, the Uber of that, but they don't really match it with the financial story, right? So, and I realize that we're in a day and age where you can have a 10-slide deck, raise $20 million, and maybe never have to think about it, but ultimately, you don't become Mark Zuckerberg in Facebook if you don't understand business. So understanding the investor's return on investment, how much money they have, how much they need to invest, how much you can take of what they need to invest, what their risk profile is. These are things that you're going to have to learn. I will tell you, I'm pleasantly surprised because right now, there appears to be a tremendous amount of capital available for those of you that are inspired enough to build something. I mean, I would be really, really shocked if everyone in here was not inspired to try and do something because opportunities like this are very rare. And in speaking to a lot of the folks here, I have seen a lot of offers of capital, a lot of funding available. Work backwards from your likely exit. Is your company going to be a high cash flow company? In which case, maybe you want to look at debt. Is your company going to be a high equity return, high risk, in which case equity is a better type of, you guys have to forgive me, I'm under attack. It's that whole flower thing. I think it's coming true. You're seeing it in action. I'm surrounded by bees. Okay. Also, when you're raising money, you've got to have urgency. You've got to have milestones. You've got to let the investors know that if they don't act soon, they're going to miss out. And that shouldn't just be posturing. That should be true. You should be building something that's so exciting that every few weeks there's more customers, there's more users, and there's more valuation. Okay? Wrong money is absolutely worse than no money. Right? Do what you can to avoid money. That's one of the biggest secrets in being a successful entrepreneur. Now, one of the things I want to relate to you as I carry on, and we get to more of the dry stuff, we use this example of being traders, of being sailors, because I want you to see that in the early days, people like Columbus, they received venture capital, right? He went to the Queen and King, he says, there's a new world, right? And I'm going to find it, I'm going to sail to it, and if you give me your money, I'm going to show you all of the wonders of the new world. Fundamentally, no matter what your business, product, or service is, that's what you do as an entrepreneur. You see the new world. You see a market that nobody else sees. And once you see it, right, once you're pregnant with that idea, that vision, you can't help yourself. You know, if you think about it, who would give money to a Portuguese sailor to take a bunch of ships from one end of the world to the other, not sure if he was going to drop off or not, right? That didn't have to do with the business plan. That didn't have to do with the PowerPoint. That had to do with the power of the dream and the promise of a new world, right? So that's the same thing to keep in mind. In order to get funded, reject all funding until it's absolutely necessary. The discipline of being broke just teaches you an immense about yourself, right, and your business. You cannot be a successful entrepreneur unless you know, hit, and blast through your limits, right? Fear is not something for entrepreneurs, right? And I'm looking around, people are nodding at me. It's not that scary, but at the same time, it's the scariest thing you're going to do if you allow it to consume you and you do it right. Know your business story as it relates to investors, not just what your product does, not just what it does for customers, but the type of financial return and model that you can achieve if you're successful. Number 3, this is the most important bullet point in raising capital, whether it's through a primary or secondary alternative source. You've got to keep crunching, right? People will say no. If rejection stops you, get out of this business. Smile at rejection. It's just an opportunity to learn what you did not do correctly or what you could do better. Sometimes it's an opportunity to learn that the person you're asking for money from is just an idiot. They don't get it, right? There are many of these cases that happen, even in my past, where I've dismissed young entrepreneurs, and now I'd be lucky to shine their shoes, right? So that's the entrepreneur's revenge. You keep focused on it, you believe. At a certain point, listen to smart people. They sometimes have something to offer you. So in terms of financing sources, I'm going to do this really quick because this is a drier portion. There's only really 4 types of ways to take in money. Debt, which has the most security for the creditor, the lowest upside, and it's probably the most painful for the entrepreneur because you have to repay the money, right? Convertible debt, it has the safety of debt, but it has the potential upside of converting to equity. Preferred equity is equity that has some of the protection of debt, right? So the middle two, convertible equity and preferred equity, have very similar characteristics. Common equity as an entrepreneur is what you want your investors to buy. That's the highest risk they can take. They've got skin in your game. But at the same time, a professional investor is not going to want to be exposed to a minority interest in common stock, right? I'm throwing out terms, I'm throwing out language because it's not magic. There's 4 things here that if you understand somewhat basically, you'll be able to narrow down to what you need and what works. And it'll also help you translate what you're reading out there in terms of funding. I started, as I got passionate about startups and tech companies, this goes back to the 90s, I would read everything I could. I'd start reading acquisition reports, valuation reports, research reports. I didn't understand 90% of it. I have a major in English literature, right? So I read the words I could, and sooner or later you start absorbing it, and you get a good sense of what's going on in the market. So debt, you know, the downside here is it must be paid. In terms of the investor, they do like debt because they have a senior preference in payment. They're potentially secured. Equity, this is what you're going to shoot for as an entrepreneur. It's simple, it's less expensive, and it aligns your interests with your investors 100%, right? You make a lot of money, they make a lot of money, you're homeless, they lost a little bit of money, right? It's a fair trade. Your bread is buttered on the same side. Common equity, they do get the upside, but it's the highest risk they can take, right? So at the end of the day, all of the different instruments, the art is going to be towards getting an investor to give you the most money at the highest valuation with the least amount of brain damage that you can get in the transaction. Preferred equity, now here's when you start getting complexities. You have liquidation preferences. So if I'm a preferred shareholder, I have the ability to ask you for more than just a common stockholder, right? I'm setting my terms. I can tell you if you sell the company, I get 2 times what I put in, right? So these are the nuances. And the 2 types that it breaks down to is participating preferred, non-participating preferred, right? Details are for this type of venue. There's no need for us to dive in. I just wanted to give you a flavor. Convertible debt, this is probably one of the most common instruments in the startup world, simply because when you're dealing with unsophisticated or new investors, let's say your family is an import-export business, and they're willing to give you your first $300,000. They don't know what valuation your company is. You don't, right? So that you don't risk making a bad decision, something that has to be corrected, something that creates problems, what you do is you take the money in the form of a convertible note. You go, look, when we find someone smarter than you and me, we'll let them set the terms and the price, and your debt at that point will convert into stock at the same price that they're buying. Well, the investor in the convertible debt might say something like, hey, I came in 3 months before that other investor, right? Why are they getting the same price? So what we tend to do is we tend to give discounts to our convertible note holders, allowing them to have a little bit of a discount to the next round. But many times we also put caps, right, suggesting how high their valuation can go. So these are the levers, the controls that you can use in order to design the perfect instrument. At the end of the day, if you get a good mentor, you get a good investor, you'll get connected to good lawyers, and this will all happen. But it's important that you understand it. Not just your business, not just your product, but you have to understand the financial and equity markets because it's key to raising funding, right? Avoids the valuation issue. That's the #1 thing that the convertible instrument does for you, right? It allows you to push what the price is into the future, but it allows you to use and spend the money. So in order to get money, right, I'm going to close with sort of an example, and I'm also going to talk about all of these different methods. But as you can see in this list, there's no limit. You have yourself, right? Until you invest your own time, your own money, your own effort, until you've convinced all your friends, all your relatives, or had them reject you, you're really of no value to anyone who's a professional investor. And many times, even your mentors are going to ask why you're asking them to take a risk that's greater than the risk you've taken, right? So before anything else, have the baby, right? Make sure you're pregnant before you go talk to people, because they'll be able to tell the difference between someone who is and someone who isn't. Friends and family. Not everybody's family has a lot of wealth. Mine didn't, right? But when you talk to your family, if you can tell them and get them excited about the premise, you may find doors opening, right? And that passion, that support that you get from people around you, it's very valuable, because like Columbus, you're about to get on a ship and maybe sail off the end of the world, right? So to have everyone in your ecosystem supportive is very helpful. Debt, borrowing on your credit cards is not really sensible, but it's been done. I've done it several times for companies I've been involved with. Bank loans, people take mortgages out on their homes. Now, when you borrow money to fund your startup, you could be the smartest person on earth, or you could be the dumbest person on earth, right? Sometimes having other people's money gives you discipline and gives you an ability to take more intelligent risk. Grants, government contracts, development deals, angel investors. I've seen that there are more and more angel groups starting out here in the rest of the Middle East. Incubators, accelerators, again, that's part of the ecosystem that you've been hearing out, and we're seeing some of these things develop over here too. Venture funds, crossover funds. Crossover funds are those that invest in public and private companies. So my company, CrowdGather, is public in the US, but there are investors that if they like a theme or a type of technology, they will look at both of them. Strategic, many times there is a customer, there is a bank, there's a venture capitalist that may have needs, or a media company that may have need for your content, your platform, and you may find money coming in from strategic places. So be open to it. Again, the key is, if you think of it as a Rubik's Cube, you're going to keep twisting and twisting until you figure out between your story, your vision, convincing people, and the type of funding to get that makes sense for what your business is going to do, what it needs, and what your ultimate exit is. Customers. Again, it's as obvious as it, I heard of a wedding portal earlier. Well, you may have people that are big suppliers that will be willing to invest in you. They may have large facilities, who knows, right? But strategic money, customer financing, these often come with very little brain damage and very attractive terms, right? A lot of times, if you raise a few $100,000 from your friends and family, you'll find that you can get another $1 million from these strategic type investors, depending upon the platform. Licensing, public markets, obviously everyone's goal is to go public if it's the right type of business and it has the type of growth rates that are necessary. Licensing, you can license out your platform or give away rights to other markets, which in a place like this may make sense. There may be something built for Lebanon that's applicable in Nigeria, but you may not want to go there. So you may want to license it in exchange for some capital. Now, out of these, the one that I didn't talk about, crowdfunding, I think this is the biggest opportunity here. So I was asked to talk on alternative and secondary capital sources, right? There's no easy way to talk about that, because you don't have an established market. You don't have a liquid angel market or a known benchmarks for your Series A and other valuations. There's no real public exits here. So it's difficult to talk about with the specificity that I could in the US. Here, it's really a function of using what you can. But when it comes to crowdfunding, the observation I made, and I've been thinking a lot about Lebanon, about Beirut, and about a type of startup or focus that I might be interested in here. And I will tell you, the intersection of all your millions of immigrants that have left this country that are all over the world and amazingly successful, right? I mean, the richest man in the world is Lebanese, Carlos Slim. So if you look at your diaspora, you look at all of these folks, the millions of dollars that they have, I really think that a smart startup or group of people here should look at connecting these folks and creating some sort of virtualized crowdfunding type of platform. I'll tell you, in India, one of the big successes of India is our smart people get exported out to other countries, they become successful, they want to come back home. You have the same element going here, and I realize it's not a fair comparison because the struggles around you are very real and very severe, but at the same time, hope is what drives all of us, so we've got to keep going, and I really think that that's the angle. So I will leave you with a little bit of a sort of big idea that I've been brainstorming to give you an idea how you can maybe connect to these folks. But my process is always, I pretend I have a Rubik's Cube, right? I'm almost done. So let's take 12 million Lebanese that are living overseas. Let's take $8 billion in remittances that they send back here. They're sending $8 billion here. If there was incentives to them to invest in startups, I don't think it would be hard to do. If you use something like blockchain technology so that you can use the cutting edge in connecting all of your diaspora here, the 12.3 million, you have tripled the domestic population living abroad. You've got billions of dollars coming in. And if you combined it with some of these ancient Islamic trading approaches, non-interest finance, or even hawala, you might be able to create something that is a very compelling Beirut-flavored startup. So when it comes to getting money, keep crunching, keep solving, and make sure you're pregnant. Thank you.